Welcome to the land of no easy answers. Our world, though more connected than ever, seems to have forgotten how to connect. Everywhere you look, the disconnect is obvious, from nature to the people around us, and even within ourselves. This is Alex Knight, and thank you for joining us as we attempt to unravel the mysteries of the mind and your universe. Now, let's meet our panel. Over in one corner is Kristin Rumohr.
Hello, friends.
And in the other corner, Aaron Stewart.
Hey, buddy.
That man's beard over there gets longer every week.
Indeed, more glorious as I go. Indeed.
As he twirls it and waxes it. I don't know if do you wax it?
I make my own mustache wax, in fact, yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, it's the only way to keep it out of my mouth. That's you know.
That is the challenge. I have noticed that.
The beeswax in it actually trains the hairs to go away from, right? So it's basically just a matter of, now it's in the growing out phase where, like I said, it's just always so yeah. So it helps to keep it away from, and anytime you drink something, it's dripping everywhere and it becomes a real hassle. So there's a certain amount of upkeep.
Yeah, there's a lot of upkeep to that. Today we're going to be talking
to look this good for you.
Yeah, well, we appreciate the effort that you go into. I think
I changed my shirt and everything.
You changed your shirt. That's good. You're all fresh. Look at you. We're going to be talking about, now this is highly inspired by the Black Mirror episode. I don't know if everyone's seen it, but I really encourage that you do. There is an episode called I'm already forgetting the name. It's from season 3. It's called Nosedive. And it's about the idea of a kind of a dystopian future, if you will. It's kind of bleak, where everyone has a social score. And what I mean by that is everything in your life is judged by your social score. How many likes you have, for example. And we already have that to some degree, in a very superficial way with social media, right? With how many views do you have? How many likes do you have? How many subscribers do you have? How many followers do you have? And that gives you a sense of like, wow, I'm actually popular. But this takes it to a whole new level. And this is actually has been happening for a few years now. And China, what they're doing is they've implemented this is still opt-in, I should say, right now, but the Chinese government wants to globally make this a mandatory thing. There's a financial company called Sesame Financial, which I believe is related to Alibaba, the large tech company that has various cloud services, payment processing, shopping, all this stuff. And so the idea is that they are right now collecting all this information about people's shopping habits, and they are creating a social score that effectively is used to judge, well, how truthful are you? How reliable are you as a person? Should we give you a bank loan, right? Should we rent you a car? Are you a good person to settle down with? Or would you make a good wife? Would you make a good husband? It's crazy. And there are people that are willingly signing up for this thing and displaying, according to this article here on the BBC, they're displaying their social score on their dating profiles. Because in China, they have a very class-based system too, right? There's a lot of this. There's a lot of priority placed on like where you come from, upbringing, how much money you're bringing in, are you going to be a good provider, education, all that sort of stuff too, right? But this is crazy, and the Chinese government wants to make this mandatory. Like their eventual plan is, no, you have no choice. You will willingly give up this information, and you will be judged on it. And this, to me, it's kind of scary when you think about it.
Mm-hmm. Can you think if we're all being judged on our, internet surfing habits, for example, or online shopping habits, and, that's building a score about who you are.
Yeah.
So it's almost more important than your financial credit in some ways, because it determines eventually things of how you will participate in society, right? So it's not just about getting a bank loan. It's about maybe, can you get on this airplane, for example, right? If your social score is so low.
Yeah, exactly. And they go into this here. I mean, let me just set the stage, okay? I mentioned Sesame Credit. So they are the financial wing of Alibaba with 400 million users. Alibaba is the world's largest online shopping platform. Not everyone might know that, because Alibaba, although I've heard the name, but I didn't know that much about them because they're not really a thing here. They are using a unique database of consumer information to compile individual social credit scores. Users are encouraged to flaunt their good credit scores to friends and even potential mates. China's biggest matchmaking service has teamed up with Sesame to promote clients with good credit scores, giving them prominent spots on the company's website. That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would remind everyone it's a communist regime.
Yes.
Right. And that's where things kind of get a little sticky.
Sure.
Right. I mean, it's one thing to have an opt-in social credit score, but if you don't understand the surveillance network that they have built in China, that is kind of the underpinning of a lot of this, and you don't realize that the surveillance network is in fact much more prevalent than you might even want to consider. And if you thought Orwell was taking it to an extreme, they're taking it further.
Yeah, listen to this. A lengthy planning document, okay, from China's elite state council explains that social credit will, quote, forge a public opinion environment that trust keeping is glorious, end quote. A warning that the new, quote, the new system will reward those who report acts of breach of trust. Wow.
Which is fine, but what's their definition of this?
True.
Is this something that we have some sort of consensus on, or was this something that the regime told us was the glorious answer?
Oh my God.
I mean, but it's an actual question, right?
Sure.
Like realistically, again, like they have a completely different mentality about how to go about things than we do here. And we really have to reconcile that it's a completely different idea that they have on how to treat their populace.
This would never fly here.
Well, if you didn't know anything about the Uyghur, population over there, you would think that this social credit score was just a benign little thing that they were doing, until you realize that they're using it to actually imprison 2 million, 3 million people, and that score is going to then impact their ability to be able to do anything in China over the rest of their lives. You know? And so again, who sets these rules? Is it Xi Jinping? Is he the one that says, no, this is what's for the good of the communist regime? Or is it something? And that's the other problem. Like a lot of the protesters, the people who've been protesting against communism, are the ones that they're going to be penalizing with this system. Which becomes again a real issue for with the Black Mirror thing, where they just did it in kind of a social media context. Yeah. But if it were everything, right? Every part of your life was part of this score, right? Like just think about that. They did it. They did a great job of just kind of illustrating how very quickly you make a couple of mistakes in your life, and this social credit score, which again, has implications for every part of your existence. Like Kristin said, trying to get onto an airplane. Yeah. If they can ban you from getting onto an airplane because you made a couple of mistakes in your past, and it's very difficult. Like they haven't laid out, they're working towards, but they haven't laid out how do you fix your social credit score, right?
Well, I don't know if there is fixing it, and this makes my skin crawl. A national database will merge a wide variety of information on every citizen, assessing whether taxes and traffic tickets have been paid, whether academic degrees have been rightfully earned, and even, it seems, whether females have been instructed to take birth controls. Critics say the social credit system is, quote, nightmarish and, quote, Orwellian. However, some believe that some kind of credit system is badly needed in China. Many people don't own houses, cars, or credit cards in China, so that kind of information isn't available to measure, explains Wen Quan, a blogger who writes about technology and finance. The central bank has the financial data from 800 million people, but only 320 million have a traditional credit history. Okay, so that's a lot of people that don't have a traditional credit history.
Mm-hmm.
But that is an Orwellian sort of, I mean, collecting all this information on people and just, I mean, I could see somebody's life going sideways because of this, because of a few mistakes. And that is the question.
I'm also trying to look at the, potential benefits of it as well. I mean,
Okay,
I guess
let's do
arguably
that.
if you don't have a financial history and there could be this secondary way to build credit, then maybe that could be of benefit to a large portion of people.
It is kind of meant to be an offset to the Western idea of going for a credit score and that kind of thing, right? So a lot of that is going to be apparently used as an alternative to our method of just, borrowing credit.
So if it's used correctly, there's just a lot of stuff jumping out at me is very scary about it. But
they've gone
in theory,
they've gone the complete other way with this too, because I mean, I guess if I could look at any kind of positive aspect of this, it's I understand the argument for transparency in a way, making all of this information completely transparent could have some positive aspects to it, because it would unearth information about somebody that maybe that person didn't want to get out, but for good reason, because maybe that person is maybe that person is untrustworthy and they shouldn't have a loan. I don't know. Maybe they've done some really bad things, but it's just the way they want to do it and the way they're trying to do it is definitely overreaching, though. And considering that, like you said, Aaron, this is a communist government. There's what kind of safety guards are there? Like, how do you get out of this if you've made some bad mistakes? What are the that would be the big question here. But, if you look at how credit scores are done here, this information is so private that, we have, and I think it's a scam that we have to pay to get our own credit history. That to me should not be, that should be illegal. I should be able to get this information, like a full report.
You can.
I've had to pay for $20 in the past. I don't know if they got rid of that, but with the credit bureau,
there's ways of
you do a
doing
credit
it,
bureau report, like a full. I'm not just talking. I can see my score, but I'm talking like a full credit history. You got to pay. At least you used to 10 years ago, but.
Well, if you want to get a printout of it, sure, but I'm pretty sure there's a way of getting a free copy of it.
Well, Equifax always used to charge for it. I don't know if that's the case, but if it is, it's something to me that this information information about me should be freely available, should be freely accessible. That should be a human right. To me. Private, like secure and private, but to me, not to the world, obviously. I don't want, I don't understand why anybody would opt into this. Why would you want to air your dirty laundry? I guess the people that are excited about this have no dirty laundry because they're obviously proud. They're proud enough to put it on their dating profile. Right?
Well, and who wouldn't want to flaunt it if they're, being found overly trustworthy and, an amazing model citizen? That sounds like a good way to get people to sign up for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
right? Raising your social standing.
It's corporations as well, right? It's not just people, but they're also doing it for other entities as well. They're going to have scores for all of basically everything that operates in. So again, it might be a way of being able to hold corporations accountable for misdeeds or flaunting rules or, breaking the hopefully public trust, right? So, it's one of those problems where, there's almost ways that, it could possibly be implemented properly, but
it won't.
Well, and that's again trusting a communist regime to do it. I would question
what could go possibly wrong with that.
But like Kristin, like from a psychological perspective, like what exactly would this kind of do to a person if you felt that big brother watching you on a daily basis?
Yeah. It's such a weird one because there's so much about it that invites just feeling social inclusion too, right? To be a part of this means that you're part of the community in a sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it kind of muddles it up.
Big on.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So there'd be kind of this sense of social responsibility in partaking in it, right? And then, yeah, it does get a bit muddled up with, okay, being watched and being monitored. Again, a lot of people would be thinking, if I have nothing to hide, then what's the harm? You know what I mean? From a government standpoint, it might be a good way to kind of, well, I mean, definitely probably what they're thinking, keep people in check, obviously, keep them in line with the narrative, because it's going to prevent anyone from stepping out for sure.
Well, apparently, too, they're saying that it says a long list of people in certain professions will face particular scrutiny, including teachers, accountants, journalists, and medical doctors. The special list even includes veterinarians and tour guides. So, I mean, I understand, I suppose, people in those types of positions. Would you want to know that your doctor is doing something nefarious on the side? But the thing again, like,
yeah.
yeah, but
how far does it go? Because
if your doctor has a bad credit score, like that has no impact on his ability to perform surgery on you. Like, what? Why do I care?
Well,
why do I need to know that?
If you know that he had bad credit and might possibly be, pushing this extra surgery because he needed to pay for the mortgage on his third house. I mean,
okay, that's an interesting. Would make you think. Well, you'd be concerned that he's going to rush. He's just doing it. He's just phoning home. Maybe not paying attention.
I think the Chinese system is a little different from the U.S. system, where it's a profit-based kind of deal, where doctors can charge whatever they feel like, apparently, for miscellaneous things, but. The idea that if you could trust your doctor more, knowing that, he obviously has a high trust score, right? I mean,
well, what about the thing that they said about whether or not females have been instructed to take birth control? That's that's none of their fucking business.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually, like one of the articles that I found, there was one of the notes that they made was that the one key purpose of the, not the one key purpose, but one of the key purposes of the credit score is to drive home the message that non-compliance is not accepted anymore.
Oh, Jesus.
Right. And that's, again, kind of the problem with this communist regime building this thing, is that how are they going to use it? They may say they're going to use it for this now. Right. And then once they tie it into their Skynet system, which is a thing. Apparently, they actually have.
They're actually calling it Skynet.
That's one of their surveillance systems. They have many different and a vast, like they have the largest surveillance network in the world of monitoring their own people.
Wow.
All these different systems set up in order to monitor their own people. And so now, again, this idea that they're going to use this credit score benignly. Mm-hmm. Without using it to crack down on protesters that speak out against the government, right? And that's exactly the problem here. So if you create an environment where those people are being, hacked down by this credit score thing, then why would you listen to them? Because obviously their trust score, which is like literally this is the whole thing, is they're trying to build a trust-based society. Right. But if your trust score is low, then why would I listen to this protester trying to speak out against the government and their treatment by?
Right.
Their trust score is low. So why would I listen to them? Mm-hmm. Right. And that's the problem. Again, it depends on who's setting the rules of what exactly is trustworthy behavior. Right.
Well, that's where the parameters set for what constitutes trustworthy, what doesn't. Right. Like if it's just interpreting data, then something, like, oh, I forgot to pay a parking fine, which is, super innocent.
Human nature.
Or, there could be circumstances surrounding that, for whatever reason you couldn't pay it, but all that it's labeled as a black mark now against your credit score, and now labels you as an untrustworthy person. Could be incredibly harmful, of course.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I tried to follow up. So this article that I was reading from the BBC, this was written in 2015, and I found another one from it was on Yahoo, and that was from May of this year, and it says it's still not mandatory, but they are making moves. They still plan. The government still plans to make this system mandatory. Mm-hmm. They just don't have a concrete date yet when that's going to happen.
Well, it was supposed to be 2020.
But it was supposed to be, but yeah, it's probably going to happen in the next couple of years here.
What's interesting is that, like,
we're this year.
they say it's not mandatory, but even for us living where we do in Western countries, we are willingly giving this information over every single day. Right? Like,
that
there's
is true.
so much data amassed on every single one of us that it is valuable, right? Like, what is it being compiled for? What could it be used for?
I'm
right?
glad
you can sell that for huge amounts.
I'm glad you bring that up, because we also have to acknowledge that a treasure trove of data is being hoovered by Google. I mean, Google's sole business model has always been, probably will always be, advertising, right? That's how they make their money, right? Mm-hmm. So we are willingly giving personal information to Facebook, to Google, to Twitter. Our shopping habits are being tracked, right? Data is being used to sell, to promote more highly customized advertising, so we can buy more products that we actually will like. So the data is already being collected, has been collected for years. It's just not being used in the same way that China is wanting to use it, but that we know of. But China is just saying, yeah, we've got this data already, but they're just going the next step. They're just saying, okay, now it is mandatory. You will be judged based on this, right? I mean, it would just take a bunch of policymakers to just change this, and say, hey, well, we've got this data. We should just do the same thing. We should just take all this data and use it to generate a score for you. They could do that now if they wanted to. It is possible now. I think it would be a lot more difficult because there's a lot more red tape, and we're not a communist regime. So I think the pushback from the public and from a lot of policymakers would be to not do this. But the data's there, right? So we know it could be done.
The other issue is that as they collect more data, they will be more susceptible to breaches as well.
Well, that's another thing, right? Securing. How do you keep all that secure? We know that is the constant fucking daily grind for IT people, and the constant fear of companies of what the immense repercussions of having customer data stolen, right? The repercussions of Russian hackers collecting this data, breaching your system, collecting this data, then holding it for ransom and saying, if you don't pay us X number of Bitcoin, you're never going to get this data back. Right?
How will your social credit be affected if they found out about all the sex toys you bought online?
And it can and has put people out of business too. Like smaller companies that just cannot afford to pay the ransomware are going to go out of business because of this, right? So you can just imagine trying to implement this thing on this scale like China is and keep it secure. Yeah.
Well, apparently it's also like it's a problem of it's a fragmented kind of system right now. There's no centralized setup. Okay. And so that also leaves them somewhat vulnerable as well. So there's a bunch of different databases that kind of feed to, but again, no centralized setup. So any one of those could have, a massive issue.
Let me ask you guys a question. On your dating profile, would you willingly put a your credit score on there for everyone to see?
My 1 billion plus? Sure.
I can't think of anybody here that would do that. That's just such a foreign concept, right?
I mean, I've never used like dating apps anyway, but I can't imagine I'd want to put much personal information on that, let alone a credit score.
Well, okay. And so here I'm going to go to, because that article that I found, I'm going to throw it up there. It was basically it's a long article, but the final paragraph of it was quite important for me here. And this really just speaks to what we were just going here, is that foreign actors need to accept the reality of an expanding credit score in China and develop strategies to deal with this reality. Most importantly, the credit score is only a small fraction of China's monitoring and surveillance capabilities. Public security-driven surveillance initiatives in particular carry much broader rights implications. So like Alex, you were talking about Alibaba. Right? They're not technically part of the Chinese surveillance system. They're setting up their own trust-based system as a separate means of kind of helping people get used to this idea of being under this trust-based system.
Okay.
So they operate on a much larger, like Alibaba is one of the world's largest commercial sites.
Yeah.
You know, so their reach goes much further than the Chinese governments would be able to. And so if they're implementing this in countries that are, you know, looking at this Chinese thing and going, what's going on here? The idea of the companies that they're now dealing with implementing the same score helps to get into their heads that this is okay. And like you said, I don't think it is, right? Like without real clear and transparent use for it.
Exactly. You know? Exactly.
You know, if I don't have a say in what you guys are collecting and how you're using that information, you know, again, it just becomes a propaganda machine. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's a real issue. So.
It certainly is. And look, I'm sure there are plenty of people that in China that are fighting against this that don't necessarily appreciate having this information available and making it public. I'm sure, like anything, I mean, you're always going to have people for and against whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever new initiative. But of course, if the government wants to make this mandatory and is making moves to that, I mean, they don't have a choice. So that is the bigger question. How the hell do you deal with this, right? When there is a problem, right?
Knowledge.
Like I'm wondering if they would implement something like, you know, like if you file for bankruptcy here after, I think it takes 7 years before stuff kind of disappears, falls off your credit report. But that sounds like too generous for them. It seems like something that they wouldn't do, right? Mm-hmm. That they would say, no, this is a black mark forever. Mm-hmm. That's going to make people's lives miserable.
Could there be any way that you guys could think of that this would be a benefit that could make people feel safer?
That's actually where I was just trying to, like, you know, I thought we had been somewhat balanced even on trying to look at this from not just the Black Mirror dystopian perspective, but that there might actually be some sort of, you know, benefit somewhat to this. But again, I look at it from, you know, the psychological perspective of just having that. You know, as a kid, you know, if your parent is standing looking over your shoulder all day, how does that make you feel? Right?
Well,
and so if you have the police standing and looking over you,
mm-hmm.
how does that make you feel? Mm-hmm. You know? And so if you had that as a pervasive state, constantly feeling like you have a camera in front of your face and they're constantly watching you, like, Kristin, how would that make a person react? Like, how is a brain going to react to that kind of surveillance?
Well, I'm thinking of there's the flip side of that as well, right? So you could take I'm being watched as a state of anxiety, and a lot of people are the opposite. They take that as a state of safety.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So we're all individuals and kind of what we need and what makes us feel safe.
And there's significant evidence to show that mm-hmm. you know, humans tend to operate better under a regime structure, right? Mm-hmm. We like to be told
Order
what to do. That just makes our brains kind of happy sometimes. Oh, I don't even have to think about it. Okay, I'll go do that then. Right? So I think that's a good point. That we may be just looking at it from the wrong lens, and that there might be actually a possible way of implementing it that is positive.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I can think of is if you think about in relationships in general, right? One of the things I always hear about is, and I've experienced this myself too, money is one of the things that always comes up in a relationship, right? One person is better at managing money than the other. And if you think about it, how many relationships have been ruined because of arguments about money, where somebody maybe wasn't very forthright with their own past or their own habits, and you don't know what you're getting into. Like, if you marry someone, you're making a big commitment to that person. You're changing. You're making a big life decision to marry somebody. And if somebody is gambling, if somebody is blowing all their money on whatever it is and not telling you, not communicating with you, if you had that transparency, like, right, here's all my cards on the table, here's exactly how I've managed my money over the last 10, 20 years, right? And if that was a good score, mm-hmm. maybe it would make that relationship a little bit more trustworthy because you know what you're getting into ahead of time. Because that person might not have actually been honest with you, right? I'm not saying that like I would like that, but that's one. I mean, if we're talking about, well, is there a positive, any positive thing out of this? I guess that could be one thing, right? No. Nah.
I mean, again, I can see where there might be positive. Like, again, if they can apply it to corporations and allow it to...
Well, corporations have transparency reports they need to publish too, right? Supplier chain reports, all that sort of stuff.
The Chinese ones have been notoriously not transparent.
Well, no, I'm talking about U.S. companies, though.
Oh, yeah, but that's the issue, right? Like, we want to put like climate or carbon taxes onto corporations, right?
Right.
But if you had a social credit system instead, where the punishment for them doing these things was that the public would see a score when you went to their website that said, "No, these guys have been doing this stuff." That might actually be beneficial, like that kind of transparency.
Yeah, you're not going to give them your money.
George Carlin always joked about having politicians with all of the logos for all the companies that paid them.
Yes.
As like a NASCAR jacket that they wear, right? Like, and so if you knew that this guy was railing against taxing Exxon while he was wearing a gigantic Exxon patch, you would really question why he was saying this.
Make you think,
you know? And so this, again, like that might be a positive thing of this, where if your politicians, your corporations actually had this score to show, no, they've been fucking us over this whole time and taking our money to do it. Right. You know, there might actually
I love
be,
that idea,
again,
though.
Positives.
But
again, you know, it's again the implementation of, and as long as we have some say in how it's being implemented, and we can relook at it next year and the year after that, and must possibly tweak it so that it doesn't feel like parts of the population are being cut out. Right? That's where this becomes a problem. You know, if you're using it to disenfranchise, you know, if it becomes a racism problem where it's the Uyghurs that you're using this against, sorry. Can't let it happen. You know?
Indeed.
And so, so again, again, there are positives for it, but it's just a matter of we just have to keep an eye on things to just see where it's going. Because if you think that China's the only country that's going to try this,
I'm sure others will.
And that's exactly the point, is that we need to watch what they're doing so that we can be ready for the next time. And how do we deal with that? And if this ends up being something that, hey, wait a minute, they implemented it great, and it ended up being something where, hey, everybody just seems to be a little bit happier now, right? Like, why wouldn't we learn from that experience instead of like, you know, just blatantly just saying, it's a, you know, product of dystopia, you know? So yeah, that's a good point, Kristin, where you know, there might just actually be some positives out of this to be had. Right?
Yeah, it's all how we look at things, for sure, right? Instead of it's natural, I think, for all of us when we heard about it to jump to the extreme of, whoa, I do not like this idea. This is, you know, a breach of my privacy and trust and everything else. But, you know, let's zoom out a little bit, see if we can look at it differently. And you're right, maybe there could be some benefits, but we'll keep an open mind, see what happens, you know, take what works, leave what doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, maybe it's just a bias inside our own brains that, again, isn't accepting of the research that actually does show that we do operate better when we're kind of told what to do, right?
Well,
and
I mean,
just,
in fairness,
just using that as part of our human nature. And you know, that's not everybody, for sure. But there might be some use to this that might actually help people to kind of better understand their place in the society.
I'm not saying I like what they're doing, because I don't, but I do think it's important, like you said, to think about these things and think about, like, are there any actual benefits of doing this? Because if you really think about it, some of the most interesting, innovative ideas of our time have seemed completely bonkers. They seemed crazy at first, right? Until you started to look at them closer and go, wait a minute, maybe the way we were doing things before wasn't the best way, right? So I think we do need to keep an open mind. We do need to look at all angles of this, right? Not just fall prey to because it's like you said, so easy to just immediately go to dystopian future, negative thoughts. This is going to be the downfall of society. Big Brother is going to be watching us, although that seems to be happening in China. So,
well, and see, that was the point I was going to make here too, is that, this social credit score is one thing, but again, it sugarcoats this surveillance network they've built. Again, the final paragraph of the report there was about how the most important part of this is that their surveillance network is the real problem. Right.
Yeah.
The social credit score is one thing, but it's this network of cameras and everything else that they've built around it that is actually what's going to be the actual issue. Right. And the social credit could be a positive thing. The surveillance network, there's, how do you make that a positive? Having cameras everywhere and
it's worked for the UK. I mean, they argue that crime was down since they implemented their closed circuit TV, whatever.
Crime is down since they stopped putting lead into everything. If you look at the actual, if you look at the actual data, this was actually a bit of an eye opener for me as well. That from the time that they started taking lead out of everything, like lead is a known cause of aggression.
Okay.
Right. And is known to lead to disruptive behavior. Yeah. And so when they took lead out of gasoline and out of paints and out of all this kind of stuff, they noticed that the murder rates started to disappear or to drop pretty quickly. Right. And this has been a steady decline since about that time. Right. And that, I think, is something that again, without understanding kind of that this was actually, again, a problem of our brains and something being fed into our brains that wasn't supposed to be there, then it puts it into more of a context of, hey, maybe this thing is actually something that we, again, have control over. And it's not just something that, we've got to crack down on people because they have no control over themselves.
Okay. All right. Well, this is interesting. I mean, I don't fear this happening here. I don't think, based on our culture here in North America, I don't think anybody would allow something like this social credit score system to happen in the way that they're implementing it. But I really don't.
Apparently, we're not paying attention for the last 4 years before this new thing just came around. You think Trump wouldn't have implemented that in a fucking second if he, especially
he would have tried, but like everything, he says a lot of things and then never does anything. He also said he was going to build a wall and that never happened. So, I mean, and he was going to make Mexico pay for it. So, I mean, that's a fucking dumb example because he doesn't do anything. And even in his own businesses, he's a failure. So,
well, and the Republican Party is in a different place now, too.
It is. Yeah, that's true.
And that's unfortunately part
probably
of
going to run again.
Thing that's been, unless they put him in jail, which looks like more of a reality as we speak.
I don't hold out hope because every time I think they have something, they got dirt on him and nothing ever fucking happens.
The Attorney General
nothing ever
has
comes
actually. The Attorney General.
This is the closest I've ever heard because this is pretty. The Capitol riot thing was pretty bad, and his complicitness in that,
and just blatantly, right?
Yeah, I mean,
you can literally tie his statements to this exact thing happening, and I just go.
I love how they blame Republicans blame Democrats saying, "Oh, it was the Democrats. They were disguised as us." So they were. I'm like, are you fucking mental? Are you out of your mind?
But if you control the narrative. That narrative is all ever. If that narrative is the only thing that your people ever hear, and they never hear the other side of the story,
it's a good
why
point.
wouldn't you push the most outlandish shit?
It's a good point. Right? And some people are eating that up too, right? Public's eating that up. They're like, "Oh yeah, of course, it's the Democrats. They're going down there. They're disguised as us."
Well, especially when you consider them to be devil-eating, blood-slurping monsters. Like literally.
I don't even know where this is coming from. I really don't know who's starting this. I don't know.
But actually,
I don't know if someone's punking somebody and it's getting spread. I don't.
No, this is true shit. But again, it comes down to the idea of other. The more you can other someone, the easier it is to control you. Hey, if you're afraid of other, that's where this whole idea of Democrats being the devil is so effective. because it's way more fun to believe, yeah, they're a bunch of devils, than to consider that they might actually just be people like you trying to do the best thing that they could, and you standing in the way of this is a real burden on the whole thing we're trying to build.
If you can demonize the other or dehumanize them, right, then you don't need to change the way you think. You can just hold fast to whatever beliefs you have.
There you go. You just hit on something really important.
That's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
Is the othering, right?
Yeah. And we see it happening so much.
Yeah.
And everywhere. And that's exactly. And if the problem is that, again, it's like addiction inside the brain, our brains like that.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We like being able to separate things into handy black and white packets that we can just go, oh, that's the answer. Yay. Right? Regardless of whether there's evidence or fact or any, right? Like if someone tells us the truth, that's another problem, is that as far as the biases in our brain goes, when we hear something the first time, that becomes the truth. And then anything else past that essentially has to disprove that. So the first spoken rule is a real problem for us, right? Because if you hear things from Alex Jones first, and then you have to have scientific proof to disprove Alex Jones, right? Well, now we got a real issue because he's just constantly spewing new shit, right? So how do you keep up with that? You know? So again, it becomes a problem of, we need to keep control over, how are we actually treating each other? How do we actually, are we living in a trust-based society now? That's what China wants to capitalize on, is they want to capitalize on the idea that this Western society isn't based on trust. And so I think it's on us to prove everything wrong. That this whole thing, that we do trust each other, that I know that you have the best interests of all of us in mind, despite all outward appearances, sometimes, right? And that we just kind of have to give each other the benefit of the doubt that again, you're not a demon. You're just the human trying to do the best they can. Sometimes that shows like you're a demon, but it's not who you are.
True.
Right?
So are you saying there's some good intentions behind what they're trying to do?
I would hope so.
With the credit score?
Yeah. Do you think that they actually believe that there is some legitimate benefit to this?
I have a hard time thinking that anyone's that evil, right?
Right. Okay.
That people just set out with the sole intention of making other people's lives miserable or trying to control them or in some way.
So it's a philosophical difference between Western thinking and their thinking.
See, I was in China. It was 25 years ago, but I remember every main corner having soldiers on it.
Yeah.
With guns.
Right.
AK-47s. Not like handguns, like rifles.
Yeah.
Right? And
there's a lot of countries that have a heavy military presence.
Cuba.
Constantly in the streets.
Walk around Cuba and you got guys directing traffic with AK-47s. You go there, you go there. It's crazy. Yeah.
And so, I get things are different now, but what I saw when I was there was a very not trust-based society, and there was a lot of corruption when I was there. I remember our very first night there, the cops pulled us over and our driver immediately hopped out of the car and ran back to the cops with a wad of cash. And basically explained to us later that if the cops had seen that there were white people in the car, the cost of the ticket would have gone up exponentially.
Just because of your race.
Just because we were white. Okay? Just because they assumed that we could afford it.
That's so crazy.
Right?
That's so nuts.
And so again,
and so he bribed them?
Yep.
And that's a common thing there.
That was absolutely the entirety of my my life there. Was every time something like that would happen where any of our handlers felt like something was about to, there was one time we were driving through a market and someone basically behind us started screaming out that we had run over their foot.
Okay.
right? And so we had this real dilemma because our driver was going, don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. He saw you were white. Right? And we're going, but wait, no, he's like, we ran over. What do you mean? Right?
That's so
and,
weird.
And it was just, but that was the thing. So again, it's a different mentality there. And so again, from the findings of this report, we really need to reconcile this. And again, just pay attention to how they're doing this.
Indeed.
And why, right? And again, try to find out if there is a positive, takeaway from this kind of thing, or whether it is just going to be a real shit show for everyone there.
You're talking about trust. I mean, yeah, it sounds like China does trust people. I mean, the people there trust each other less than we do here.
Which is, but that's, not necessarily. Like that was, again, kind of a generalization. I think those people were put into a system that corruption was the only way to, that's the thing with communism is that, any unreported income is immediately a real, right? Like,
well, and desperation makes people do crazy things too, right?
Yeah.
There's obviously a ton of poverty and people in desperate situations. So it makes sense that you're going to try and, make a little extra however you can.
Well, we kept hearing the common phrase that we kept hearing was that the rice paddies over there were well fertilized.
Okay.
And the joke was that it was fertilized with dissenters.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning that people that spoke up against the government tended to disappear.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
that's scary.
So again, my, trying to find the positive of this, but coming from seeing that happening and hearing that story repeatedly from a lot of the people that we interacted with while we were there, that this was just a thing. Don't do anything illegal because you will disappear.
Jesus.
And now
I'm sure their prison systems.
And so, oh my God, that was the
you
other.
Don't even want to.
They said you do not want to go to jail. That was like.
Can you imagine being white, being in a Chinese jail? I mean,
do not go to jail in China. But again, like now they've got this social credit score and we're supposed to believe it's benign, while coming from that and going, that didn't seem benign at all. So I'm skeptical, but
sure.
I
it's
agree
good to be skeptical.
I agree that was 25 years ago, and maybe things are different now. That was under a different leader at the time. Xi Jinping has not filled me with a whole lot of promise for, the altruistic nature of this system.
Doesn't fill your heart with pride?
Well, 2 or 3 million Uyghurs imprisoned in a province in China.
Yeah.
Just how do you justify that? How do you justify that? And then again, with this surveillance and the credit score, how do you reconcile those two things?
Yeah.
Right? 3 million people in jail just because they're the wrong religion, race. I mean,
it's a good point. Mm-hmm. Man, this has really bummed me out, this conversation.
Boy, you expected this to be the happy conversation, did you?
No, I didn't expect
easy answers around here, guys.
No, exactly.
No. And that's, again, so it's more just a matter of we need to just keep an eye on it, and hopefully it'll turn in a direction that we can be proud of what they've built.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
to keep an open mind to at least take away, if there's anything positive to take away from it.
Sure, of course.
Right? Focus on that. Let's maybe pull that part out and
on the flip side,
against anything that's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. On the flip side, to absolutely shit on it if it deserves to be shit on.
Yeah.
And I think that's, we look at the problem of China being this superpower now. And, even this episode, we were going to talk about it, and I was kind of going in the back of my head going, right? Because it is a touchy subject, and their government is they're big on the crackdown. So I guess we'll see where this goes.
We shall see. Yeah, and we can circle back to this, in the future if there's any breaking.
We're gonna have to.
If there's any breaking news on this, but I guess the takeaway is, I do try to keep an open mind because I think it's important, as because technology is in a constant state of evolvement, and things are rapidly changing now in our world too, not just here but globally. And I think it's important to not just look at the bad, but look at the positive stuff, or at least try to look at the other angle, like we've done on this episode. Like, are there any positive things to this? How would you do a system? How would you implement something like this, in a better way? I think those are interesting questions to ask, for sure. But for now, we are running a little long, so we're going to end it right there. Thank you very much for watching this episode on YouTube. We release new episodes every Tuesdays and Thursdays, so yeah, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment. Let us know what you want us to talk about in a future episode. If you do have any requests, we are taking them now, so go right ahead. You can also listen to this as an audio podcast in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, TuneIn and Stitcher, Spotify, and Amazon as well. We're available everywhere. We're on social media, so please do say hello. We're at the Subvert Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as well. And of course, our email is open to you at send it over to hello@thesubvertpodcast.com. Subscribe to the newsletter as well. We've got a blog that's going up soon. It's thesubvertpodcast.com/blog. That's all the time we have for this week. But before you go, just remember that we're all fucked up. So let's be fucked up together. Bye.